Hello, my beautiful souls. My name is Jennifer Walker Zen. I'm a psychic intuitive, and I've been reading tarot since I've been 14 years old. Hello, welcome. Today, I'm going to bring to you guys the whole interview that I did with James. He is a very experienced astrologer, doing it for more than 30 years. He's been able to marry Western astrology and Vedic astrology. There is so much knowledge that he has and how much knowledge he's brought forth in this video. So I wanted to let you guys see the video in its full entirety. So, and I know I've broken up in parts, but this is your chance to see the whole video in its entirety. So my beautiful darlings, if you guys like it this way, you want me to continue this way, hit that like button. Let me know in the comments below. All right, let's go jump into the video. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please support James, leave a comment, let me know what your thoughts are, and please hit that like button. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I love you guys so much. All right, let's move to the video.
Dharma, a person's purpose in life, what their Dharma is, and how karma gets in the way. We'll talk about that. I also want to talk about dashas and bhuktis, periods and sub-periods, because for me, I always found that once I learned what the natal chart was, it was quite simple to understand dashas and bhuktis. I'm getting clients that have studied natal charts for years and are still confused with dashas and bhuktis. So I want to talk about that. Also, since we're doing that, I want to talk about transits a little bit. And then I want to talk about my classes, although the stuff about the classes will come up as I'm talking. I'll say, oh, this is in my classes. So I just did a 12-session series. I stopped doing charts for about 3 months, and each week I would work on one house. So the first house, I would do some charts, some great charts with great first houses, some with terrible. The second house, I would do Taylor Swift because her second house of writing, and writing is so intense. Then I would, so it would be, each class was an hour and 20 minutes, and each class focuses on one house. But it's an extremely powerful series if you watch all 12 classes. I'm getting students that, have been confused for years. They watch the classes and they're starting to understand stuff. I have this one, it was a client from 25 years ago. He became a friend, and I've been sending him my books as I would write them over the years, and he would study them. But every time he'd ask me about some horoscope, I could see that he didn't know what he was doing. And I kept wondering, he's read all my books, he's seen all my lectures. How can he possibly not be able to do this? I don't understand. He's a very intelligent guy. He watched 7 or 8 classes, and he had this huge aha moment. He said, James, I can finally do it. I said, what was the catch? He said, I always thought that something in a horoscope had to be either good or bad. So the marriage had to be either good or it had to be bad. This is not astrology. This is not life. Life is complicated. Life is complex. I talk in those classes. For class number 7, which is marriage and relationships, I use the chart of Charlie Chaplin, because he has, now in each class, I actually use 3 or 4 horoscopes, sometimes 5 or 6, just focusing on that house and a little bit on the chart as a whole. But Charlie Chaplin has the sun exalted in Aries in the 7th, Mars in its own sign in Aries in the 7th. Now those are powerful because the sun's exalted and Mars is in its own sign, but they're malefics. They are malefics. They're not good for marriage. But Moon and Venus are aspecting them. Venus is in the same house with Sun and Mars, and Moon is aspecting the Sun and Mars. So it's an incredible chart for marriage. And Mars, which is in 21 degrees Aries in its own sign, is 4 degrees away from Venus. Beautiful, artistic. He had 4 marriages and 1 disaster that wasn't married, but it was another like a marriage. They were all actresses. They were all gorgeous, because the 7th ruler Mars is right next to Venus, and it's aspected by the moon within 4 degrees. So all of this is looking really great. He's got these tremendously beautiful, youthful, gorgeous actress wives. and then he has these massive scandals. He gets a girl pregnant, she's under 17 or something. Okay, so this is because Saturn in his horoscope is in the 10th house in Cancer, aspecting the Mars, Sun, Venus in the 7th house. But it gets more specific. Hold on, it's a little windy here. Gets a little more specific. Yes, Saturn is aspecting the 7th house, but here's the key. Saturn is sitting in 21 degrees of Cancer. So when it's aspecting Aries, it's not only aspecting its fallen sign, Saturn is exalted in Libra, fallen in Aries. Saturn's not only aspecting its fallen sign, Saturn's in 21 degrees, hitting Mars, the 7th house ruler, which is also in 21 degrees. So the 7th ruler is fantastic with Venus, with moon, full moon. It's full moon, not just the moon, a full moon. But Saturn aspects the ruler in the fallen sign in the 21st degree, 1 degree away from its worst position. So this is how you have a complicated situation. And so many students that are taking the classes, they're saying, oh my God, now I'm starting to understand. It's complicated. It's complex. Even after this, you have to look at the Navamsha. Anyway, so that's what the classes are about.
I do have a question about that Saturn. Okay, so I have heard if Saturn is in the 10th house and it looks at the 7th house, it actually keeps you in a marriage. It keeps the marriage, like it's very hard to break the marriage if Saturn's looking at the 7th house. Would you say that's the case?
I would say to some extent, yes. The worst ones are the moon in the 7th house. The moon in the 7th house, the person that has it, their emotions are so strongly committed. You get together with a person with the moon in the 7th house, that marriage can go, it could be, if the horoscopes are indicating it's a bad marriage, that person almost cannot get out. They almost cannot get out because their emotions are so committed. With Saturn, let's take Saturn in the 7th house, which is bad for marriage, difficult for marriage. So if Saturn is in the 7th house, there's definitely going to be problems in marriage, in the first marriage for sure. And you have two possibilities with them that I see all the time. One, the person is suffering for 10, 15, 20 years before they get out because they can't get out because it's Saturn. The other is where the marriage lasts 10 days or 1 year or 1 year. It's like it's so bad and they're able to get out. So I don't know about Saturn aspecting the 7th doing that. It sounds like it might because Saturn, but where I really worry is when the moon is in the 7th because the person is so committed, which is good. It's good for marriage. In fact, when I'm doing horoscopes, it's really interesting. There's only 2 planets that are halfway decent in the marriage house, and it's the moon and Jupiter. Okay, you take the sun in the 7th house, the partner is bossy and strong-willed. They may be powerful and successful, but they're bossy and strong-willed. Not great for marriage. You take Mars in the 7th house. Partner could be aggressive, assertive. They could be a fireman. They could be a policeman, but there's going to be fighting and friction. You take Mercury in the 7th house. Mercury in the 7th house, first of all, if Mercury's in the 7th house or 7 houses away from the moon, we'll talk about that in a minute. When you're looking at marriage, you have to also look at the planets opposite the moon as a 7th house indicator because of the Chandra Lagna. I'll talk about that in a minute. So you have Mercury in the 7th house or Mercury 7 houses away from the moon. Mercury is dual. Mercury and moon are, the moon is waxing and waning, so it has a lot of numerous things. Mercury is dual. It rules the twins, the Gemini. So the Mercury in the 7th house, a likelihood of 2 great loves in the lifetime. A likelihood of 2 major loves in the lifetime. That's not so bad. The problem with Mercury in the 7th, or 7 houses away from the moon, is that the partner is likely to be fickle. In other words, The person with Mercury 7 houses away from the moon or in the 7th house, the person with that placement gets a partner where the relationship is very mental and intellectual and not emotional. So there's not enough glue to hold the marriage together when there's a problem. The glue isn't there. Okay, so Mercury's no, I don't like Mercury. Venus, when I came back from India, I said, what's the matter with these Indian astrologers? They don't like the passion of Venus? And then I started to see all the people with Venus in the 7th house. They get the most beautiful, gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous, drop dead handsome partners. And they have affairs. There's too much passion. It's not that they always have affairs. It's that there's too much passion. What do I mean by that? Marriage is about compromise. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. You don't need that kind of passion. It gets in the way. So Venus in the 7th house very rarely is a good placement. Very rarely. So I don't really like that. Saturn, I don't like. Jupiter, I love. Jupiter in the 7th. Moon, I like. The partner will be nurturing, emotional, sensitive. The person may be special, especially if it's a full moon special, meaning whenever I say special, the client's saying, you mean like special needs? I go, no, special, good. So the moon in the 7th house is good, except if you're in a bad relationship, you can't get out. Very hard. Jupiter is fantastic. Jupiter in the 7th house, you say, ooh, that's the person I want, and you go get them. And these people think that's normal. They think, yeah, that's normal. I want that person, I go get them. No, here's how it works. I want that person. Oh, they don't want me. That's what usually happens. Jupiter, they get the partner they want. And Jupiter in the 7th house is even better for the person being empathetic than the moon. The moon in the 7th house makes a person empathetic. They're great therapists. They're great healers. They have empathy. People come to them with their problems. Jupiter, you mark this. Find people with Jupiter in the 7th house. Start talking to them about your problems. Start talking to them about anything. You will see they are the best listeners in the world. They listen. They're empathetic. You get a lot of therapists with Jupiter in the 7th, and you get a spiritual partner, and it's a happy marriage. Those are the only two planets that I like in the 7th house.
I do have a question about that, though. Okay, so we know Jupiter is good in the 7th house, but I have heard Sagittarius in the 7th house is not too good because of the fact that the partner can be a little bit picky, or they're kind of like, yeah. That's what I've heard. I don't know if that's the case from your experience.
When I give talks, I tell you everything I know. That's what I do. I don't hold back anything. I tell you everything I know. And then when people say my teacher said this and my teacher said that and my teacher said this, some of them I say that's total nonsense. I have no idea about Sag. I had just because I haven't looked at it. I haven't seen it. I only know what I know. So I don't know about that. Maybe. So I also want to talk a little bit about composite charts. So this is really important. Well, actually, let me go back a minute. So when you are looking for marriage, it is very, very, very complicated. It's not simple. You have the 7th house, the planets in the 7th, wherever the ruler of the 7th house is, what planets are aspecting the 7th. You have to do all of that. That's a lot to do. And then you have to do the same thing with the moon. Now, the moon, they call it Chandra Lagna, moon ascendant. So that's what they teach. And many astrologers will, after they look at the planets in the houses, they'll look at the chart from the point of view of the moon. Oh, look, Saturn's in the 10th from the moon. Mars is in the 3rd from the moon. I don't do that because I only use what I find works really well. If it doesn't work really well, I just don't use it. So I don't really look at Chandra Lagna so much because it doesn't do that much for me as a whole chart. But I tell you what, I will take all the money out of my wallet and bet you that if Mars is opposite the moon, there's going to be fighting in relationship. If Venus is opposite the moon, the partner's going to be an artist, romantic, beautiful. If Jupiter's 7 houses from the moon, partner's going to be spiritual, religious, philosophical. You've got, even if Ketu is 7 houses from the moon, partner's going to be Ketu-like. If Rahu's anything opposite the moon, it's just like having the planet in the 7th house. It's the same. Then you have to look at Venus. All of those things could be great. All of those things could be great. And Venus could be a train wreck. And if Venus is a train wreck, that's the karaka of marriage. Now that comes into play. And then you have to look at the Navamsha, the marriage chart. Now, if you're looking at the Navamsha, you have to be able to know whether these divisional charts, the Varga charts, are accurate. Because the marriage chart changes about every 17 or 18 minutes, and it depends where the birth time is within those 18 minutes. So you can't just use a Navamsha or a Dasamsha unless you can look and see, well, this person could go 5 minutes later in his birth time, 5 minutes earlier in the birth time, I can use it. If it's a chart where 1 minute earlier or 2 minutes earlier changes the Navamsha, you got to start asking questions. Yeah. So now I want to talk a little bit about composite charts, not synastry. Synastry is where you lay their chart over yours. So if your Venus is 10 Libra and their Saturn is 12 Libra, you got problems. That's a synastry. That works, but that's not the most powerful one for me. I use composite charts, and I use the composite chart that Robert Hand, there's different methods. I use the Robert Hand method, which is you're using the midpoints of the planets. So if my sun is 3 Aries, and the other person's sun is 3 Libra, the middle point would be 3 Cancer, and that's where the sun is in the composite chart. The composite chart doesn't tell you anything about you or the other person. It just says what happens when the two of you come together. So if the two of you, if the composite chart is all fighting and friction, it means there's going to be fighting and friction. The man may not have fighting and friction in his chart. The woman may not have fighting and friction, but if the composite chart has it, that's going to go on. And with the composite chart, it's very hard to change it. In a natal chart, first of all, when I do a reading, I never expect more than 70, 75% accurate. People say, oh my God, everything you said was true and correct. Yeah. I figure 75 is good. But there's things in a horoscope where people can change, number one. Number two, sometimes I will see the genetics. Like I'll say, are you a doctor? They go, no. I said, the chart's got medical all over it. They say, my mother's a doctor, my father's a doctor, my grandfather's, so it's in the genetics. Or the Indian charts, the Indians, they're all spiritual. All the Indian charts, they have spiritual stuff, but they're not necessarily doing the spiritual. It's just in their genetics. But in the natal chart, you may have something bad, but you may be able to work on it, to do self-improvement, to do therapy, to change it. Try changing a composite chart pattern. You can't do it. Because let's say that the composite chart has Pluto exactly opposite or squaring Venus. There's going to be a control manipulation element. Let's say the guy is manipulating and controlling. Let's say you get a hold of that guy and you say, look, Johnson, you got to stop this. You got to stop this. The person says, you know what? You're right. I'm going to stop it. You know what happens then? The woman assumes, the partner assumes, they start manipulating because the composite doesn't say anything about anybody. It says what happens when these two get together. So if you put 2 bad chemicals together, they're going to explode no matter what. There's no way to stop it. Okay, so I just want to tell you what I consider the deal breakers. So if somebody comes to me for a composite chart and they want to talk for an hour on the composite chart, I say go to Dennis Harness. He specializes in that. I said what I do is I'll do your natal chart with the dashas and bhuktis in the future, and I'll throw in the composite for free. But I'm not going to talk about it for long. 5-10 minutes, that's it. I'm looking for, does the relationship work? Can the relationship work? Some of them will be extremely strong love bonds. Some of them will be not so strong love bonds, but they're okay. They can still be together. And there's very good aspects and there's very bad aspects. These are the deal breakers. Saturn moon. Saturn moon, conjunct, opposite, square. Now they have to be tight, within 3, 4, 5 degrees, but oftentimes you'll see them within 2 or 3 degrees. That's a deal breaker. What it means is, it means that neither person will get their emotional needs met. Saturn is restriction, moon is emotions. Neither of them will get their emotional needs met. And far worse, they can't break up. The Saturn moon keeps them together, so they can't break up. Okay, that's a bad one. The next one is Mars conjunct Saturn. Now, Mars square or opposite is going to be bad as well. But let's just take Mars conjunct Saturn. If I see a composite chart, so Mars Saturn means the timing is bad. Mars is desire, Saturn is restriction. When one person's hot, the other person's cold. The timing doesn't work. And they're going to live in, they're oftentimes when they come to me, I see Mars Saturn, I say, do you live in different cities? Do you live in different countries? Because the timing's no good. Now they're thinking that when we get married, then we'll move in together, we'll be in the same city and everything will be great. No, the Mars Saturn is the reason that they're in separate cities to begin with. The timing's never going to be any good. So Mars Saturn is not very good. Saturn Venus is not good because Venus is love and Saturn is restriction, obstacles, delays, and problems. The love, the romance is just dead. Now, very important, very important. The Sun Saturn is not so bad. Many people have the Sun Saturn conjunction. Okay? And what that means is both people are compromising. But as long as there's other features in the horoscope that are good, that's fine. I've had 2 marriages where Saturn is with the Sun, but there's also, and this one's for 35 years. The first one wasn't 5 years. But the Saturn Sun keeps, it's glue. It keeps the people together. They're committed, and they both are willing to compromise. But Saturn Venus, forget it. There's never going to be any romance or love feelings. Saturn Moon. Now, I had an experience 2 days ago. It really upset me with Saturn Moon. I'm doing a horoscope for this guy and his wife. I was doing his chart, then I'm going to do the wife's chart later. And I said, well, let me throw in a composite here. I look at the composite. I just looked at it, at night briefly. I didn't look real, and there were like these tremendously good aspects. And so I say to the guy in the beginning of the reading, you got a good composite there. I'm going to talk about it, but you got a good composite with your wife. He says, yeah, I got a great marriage. The reading goes over by about, it's like I talked to this guy much longer than I usually do. I said, look, I'll do the composite when I do your wife's chart. I look at the composite and suddenly I see Saturn 1 degree away from the moon. I go, this is a deal breaker. What are these people? How has this marriage gone on for 30 years? I'm like, oh no. And I put it in my book, the Braha Sutras. I talk about the deal breakers. And I talk about how Moon Saturn is just, you never get what you want. But I'm looking at it, and then I find that the Moon Saturn is in an exact grand trine. So Jupiter's aspecting the same degree as the Moon Saturn, and then Venus is aspecting same degree. That did it. I have to ask you something. When you're talking, I can't hear you. Is that normal or?
Well, I just wanted to make sure I didn't have any interference when you were
Oh, no,
talking.
that's fine. Okay,
So
I just got.
because what happens sometimes with Zoom is you'll hear like a little, when you're doing the post edit, you're like, okay. So I've learned
No,
from other
it's fine.
interviewers, professional interviews, I'm like, they always mute themselves. I can't hear them. So,
I
but
just, I,
that makes sense
I
with
just,
Jupiter because if Jupiter has, if there's any problems anywhere, Jupiter looks at something, it's going to help it. That makes sense to me. That's very interesting.
if the Moon Saturn was really tight and Jupiter was a 5 degree aspect, it still might be a bad marriage. But it's Jupiter and the other Venus both aspecting really, really tightly. So it was quite good. Yeah. But you brought up a really good point. In the classes, that I teach, I try to explain that you use the planets, you personify the planets, you consider them like gods. You consider them like people or like gods. Okay, so they're people. So if you have, say you have Venus 5 degrees away from Saturn, Saturn is hurting that Venus. But on the other side of Venus, 4 degrees away, is a full moon. So I explained. So you figure you're the Venus is you're the planet in the middle. You're getting, so this guy Saturn is bearing down on you. But then over here, you got the full moon saying, hold on, Johnson, I'm going to protect them. So it becomes mixed. Now, here's the thing. If you have an afflicted planet, so this in class 6, I talk all about health and healing. So if you have a planet, let's say it's Jupiter. Let's say Jupiter's right next to Mars in Cancer. It's getting hit by a fallen planet, whatever. So Jupiter's afflicted. Now you're going to, health-wise, it doesn't matter whether it's connected to the 1st house or the 6th house. Jupiter could be ruling any house. It could be anywhere. If Jupiter's afflicted, you got liver, gallbladder, spleen, allergy problems. So Jupiter's right next to Mars or Jupiter's right next to Saturn. You got liver, gallbladder, spleen, allergy problems. But over here, you have Venus throwing a really tight aspect, or even doesn't have to be tight. If Venus is also aspecting, or a full moon is also aspecting, or Mercury's aspecting, the problems will be there, but they are fixable. If Jupiter's being afflicted and there's no benefics helping out, those problems are really hard to fix. And I see this all the time. Venus is the throat, thyroid, reproductive, and kidneys. I see Venus in a very bad condition because of aspects, but then it's got an aspect from Jupiter protecting it. It doesn't mean you don't get the problems. It means that you get them, but they're fixable. Unless Jupiter's aspecting that Venus within 2 degrees and Saturn may be 12 degrees away, you don't even have to worry about it. So it depends on the degrees. When I went to India, they did not use degrees. They put the degrees outside. They put the degrees outside the horoscope. And are you ready for this? They don't say Jupiter's 7 Aries. They don't say Venus is 6 Virgo. They say Venus is 132. Mars is 75. How are you going to figure out the aspects? That's how they do it. So, but when I went to India, I knew Western astrology. So I said, wow, they are missing a lot with the degrees. And the degrees in the classes I teach, it's all about the degrees. And one of the things I love to do in the classes, I love to do it because it blows people's mind. I say, all right, look, we're going to look at the chart of Amitabh. Amitabh is this great, famous actor in India. And his 3rd house is a monster house. The 3rd is music, dance, drama. It's a monster house. The artistic energy is phenomenal. And they go, huh? There's no planets in the 3rd house. I do this over and over and over so that when they're done with these 12 classes, they're never going to do that again. So here's the story. The story is the 3rd house is aspected by the moon. That's one good aspect. Rahu is aspecting the 3rd house. Now, people think Rahu and Ketu are these horrible, Rakshasa, terrible. Yeah, they're Rakshasas, they're malefics. But they also have good qualities. Rahu is worldly power. Now, you don't want Rahu in the house of marriage. That doesn't help so much, although it could give a powerful partner. But Rahu aspecting the 3rd house is power to the house of mechanical, technical, physical, mechanical, technical, computers, and the 3rd house is the arts. So Rahu's helping the 3rd house. The moon is aspecting the 3rd house. Now, the ruler of the 3rd house. Oh, wait, I got to say one more thing. Mars is aspecting the 3rd house. So you got moon, Jupiter, Mars. Already you got 3 planets aspecting the 3rd house. And Mars is aspecting its own sign, Aries. Moon is aspecting 3rd house. Rahu's aspecting 3rd house. That's enough for the 3rd house. However, the 3rd house ruler is 22 Virgo, and Mercury is 23 Virgo, and Venus is 15 Virgo. So Mars is aspected tightly by Mercury, not Mercury, Mercury in Virgo. Mars is aspected by exalted Mercury. It's with Venus. I mean, it's just a monster 3rd house. And there's no planets in there. I do this over and over so that these people will never again do that. They'll never say, oh, there's no planets there. Yep. So I want to talk about Dharma a little bit.
Okay.
So I was doing a session with somebody recently, and they said, oh, well, there's different interpretations of what Dharma means. Well, I was in a spiritual movement for 10 years, and our guru basically said the Dharma, a person's Dharma, is what comes most natural to them, what is going to be natural, what is going to be fulfilling, and what's going to be evolutionary. So in the horoscope, oftentimes I will see that a person's Dharma is on the entertainment side or the artistic side. But if they're lacking confidence because Saturn's in the ascendant or Saturn's with the sun or moon, they will instantly say, oh, I have no artistic talent. I say, well, I'm sorry, that's your Dharma. The whole horoscope is indicating that the greatest evolution, fulfillment, happiness is going to come from doing what is most natural. So in that particular horoscope, what is most natural is the arts, but they're not doing it because they think they're no good. I have no this, I have no confidence. So you have to work with those people. And I used to get in the first 10 years, it's different now. Half my clients are Indian now because I've done so many Indian videos. So I get them, half my clients are Indian. In the first 10 years, I didn't get that many, but anytime I would get an artist or a writer or something that wasn't going to make a lot of money, they would say, no, I'm a mechanic, I'm an engineer, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor. I say, are you happy? No, I don't really like it. So it got to the point where this is a true story. I used to say, I get an Indian chart and I'd say, oh, well, let me say this. I don't ask for questions and feedback. I don't want to do that because I want to be able to tell the person what I see objectively. Then you can tell me where I'm wrong. But I want you to see what I see. What good is it to tell a person that they're going to be, that their greatest talent is law if they've already told me that and they're thinking about it, but they're scared to do it now, they know, oh, I should do that. So when I would get an Indian chart where it was a Dharma that didn't make money, a career that didn't make money, I would say, well, so your greatest talents are in the writing area, writing and arts and creative, etc. But you probably don't do that. You're probably going to be, and then I'll look for the next thing. Even if it wasn't there, I'd say law, I'd say engineering, computers, and their jaws would drop. They say, how did you, oh, and I would say, yeah, you're probably not doing the writing or the arts. You're doing this other thing and you're unhappy. And their jaw would drop like I was psychic. And I don't use psychic energy in my readings. I have some psychic energy, but it's not my, I want to find it astrologically. That's why my books are the way they are, because I'm not giving psychic stuff. So the Dharma, let me be very clear. The Dharma is not the career. The career is the career. The career is the career, but the Dharma, so your Dharma could be helping and healing. The chart as a whole is giving the Dharma. So if you see Moon or Jupiter in the 7th house, right away, I know that's marriage, but right away you know how empathetic they are. Then you start seeing the 6th house being very strong. Then you see the Moon in the 10th house where they want to nurture people, or Moon's in the 1st house and they want to nurture people. So you start seeing 5 or 6 different features where the person's wanting to help people and heal people. That's the Dharma. The career could be Venus exalted in the 10th house and their career is doing the arts. That could be the career. That's okay. That's okay.
No, I could definitely see why this is useful. Okay. The reason why is how many readings do I do where people are like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with myself and what's my purpose here. That is so important to know what the Dharma is, because you'll understand what you come here for, what you really wanted to fulfill for your soul. Makes sense.
And there's
yeah.
so here's the thing. And I tell people that have that problem, I say, look, everybody knows their Dharma. They don't know the career necessarily. Everybody knows the Dharma. It's what is most natural. So it's what's most natural for you and what's going to make you happy. That's the Dharma. When people say they don't know their Dharma, you know what I hear? James, I have no confidence. James, I have no confidence. James, I have no confidence. That's what they're saying, but they don't know it. I say to them, look, when you were a kid, what did you dream about? Because when you're a kid, you're not thinking intellectually, you're thinking from the heart. What did you dream about? Now, look, they may say, I wanted to be the queen. Okay, you're not going to be a queen. What did that mean to you being a queen? Oh, that meant me being the center of attention or me being the. I wanted to go to the moon. Well, not many people are going to the moon. What did that mean to you going to the moon? That's one. What did you love? What did you want to do as a child? That's real important. Number two, if a genie came down and said, I'm going to give you your wish, what would you like to do? I want to be a rock star. I want to be mayor. I want to be this. They know the Dharma. The confidence isn't there. Now, I had a very interesting session the other day. It was a video session. And we were talking about the Dharma. And somebody said, well, so what if the Dharma, you're doing your Dharma and it's not successful? I said, I have a friend who had that. He's not alive anymore. This guy was a writer and an artist. And his whole life was about writing and art. His career was miserable. Okay? It didn't succeed very well. He paid his bills, but that was about it. The karma with the 10th house was so bad. The 10th house was bad. And in the Dasamsha chart, the 10th house was bad. Now, when I do Varga charts, the marriage chart, I don't look at the whole chart. I don't find it accurate. I look only at the 7th house. Planets in the 7th house, and where's the ruler of the 7th house. You don't use aspects. You don't use aspects. I don't look at the whole chart. I just look at the 7th house. When I'm looking at career, I don't look at the whole. You could have a Dasamsha chart with 6 planets in the 6th house and think they're going to be healing. No, you look at the 10th house, what's in the 10th house, and where's the 10th house ruler. That's what you look at. Okay. So his Dasamsha 10th house was a wreck. His natal 10th house was a wreck. Here's 2 great stories for you. Now, so he was in his Dharma. He was doing the writing, he was doing the arts, and he was happy doing it, but he could never succeed. So 2 stories. One, this is pre-internet. He writes, I don't know, a movie script or a book or something like that. Takes him a year. He didn't have a computer, and he never bothered to Xerox the copies. Had 1 copy of his book. He's in a hotel room, and he was out. Some drug addicts were looking for some guy who had drugs, and they went in the wrong room, into his room, took the briefcase, and took his book. They got nothing, and he lost his book. Wait, I got a better one for you. He has a friend who's in a movie, and he says, oh, listen, I love that director. Take this script to your producer and show it to them. Producer says, wow, this is great. I want to meet this guy. My friend's friend forgot to tell him, oh, by the way, he likes. So, okay, so look, the person that was talking about this was complaining about, because he thought that he had a Dharma. I was telling him what his Dharma was. He says, yes, that makes sense, but my family thinks it won't be good, and it won't make enough money, and it won't do this, and it won't do that. And what if it's not successful? Doesn't matter if it's successful or not. It's your Dharma. When you're doing your Dharma, you're going to grow and evolve and have fulfillment faster than ever. And I tell a person, your Dharma is to do this. They say, but I have no talent there. I say, it doesn't matter. If it's natural, if it's in the horoscope and it's natural to you and you love it, you're going to grow so fast. And if you do your Dharma, I know, because I'm someone who I never made any money from astrology. I never made any money pursuing enlightenment. But my horoscope is very difficult. All the benefics are afflicted. It's not an easy horoscope. I have a great 9th house and 10th house, great spiritual and 12th house and great career, but a very difficult life. But I've been in my Dharma, which is twofold. Astrology really is my career, My Dharma is more on the metaphysical, spiritual side. So my real Dharma was pursuing enlightenment and everything connected to the spiritual. Everybody thinks, oh, he's written 6 astrology books. He's done 80 videos. He's known for, you know, I don't consider astrology my Dharma. I mean, I'm in my Dharma when I'm doing it, but my Dharma is more about enlightenment. And I did write a book on that. It's called Living Reality. You can see it in the background. It's that red book back there.
I do
That's
know
a,
I do know what you mean, James, about that. You get typecasted. I feel the same way. I
yeah,
feel like I would be a far better, like, talking about enlightenment, all those kinds of things, one of those kind of channels, but you get typecasted. So
yeah.
that's
And
how
there
it
was
is.
a, so I just want to say one thing. When I was talking about, I said a person had Moon or Jupiter in the 7th, Moon in the 10th house, and then a really strong 6th house, but their career was the arts. Okay, that's their career is the arts. But who they are is a healer and a fixer. So when they're in the arts, they're going to be fixing things and helping people, helping. So who they are, and I talk about this in the Braha Sutras. When you're doing a horoscope, you don't just want to know about what they do. That's their karma. That's like they come for a reading. You tell them about love, money, career, and health and spiritual, and they walk away. There's no context. No context. So they walk away. So the reading becomes they remember 1 or 2 things about the reading 5 years later. Oh, he said I would make money or something like that. It's all out of context. When you find the person's dharma and you say, look, I don't care what you're doing as a career, although I'll tell you from the career, but your dharma is to be a healer, a helper, a fixer. That's who you are. Okay. They will never forget that. They will never forget that. Who you are is a person about religion and philosophical and spiritual. No, you can't make a living at that. Your living is computers because the 3rd house is really, really strong. But your dharma is the spiritual. It's that's the dharma. So that they will remember till the day they die, because it will help them to do things that they might otherwise not do because it doesn't make sense practically. Their family says it's not good, it doesn't make money, blah, blah, blah. When they get to the end of their life, if they didn't do what they really love, they're going to feel it. They're going to go, God, I didn't do the arts because I thought it was impractical. I wish I had done that. And you know what? They're going to come back in the next life. And guess what's going to happen? They're going to be going for the arts again. When you die, talk about non-duality just for a second. So Sailor Bob Adamson, who had studied with Nisargadatta Maharaj, a great Advaitin non-duality teacher. I brought him to America. He stayed in my house for 5 weeks. I wrote that book about it. And what happens is when you get non-duality, which is basically the understanding and deep commitment that who you are is not the body, not the thoughts, and not the feelings. Who you are is awareness or consciousness. When you get that so thoroughly that at any moment you can just close your eyes and you go, yep, there's the consciousness, there's the awareness, that's my nature. When you get that, you don't wind up in 24-hour-a-day bliss. You don't necessarily have powers. You might, but you don't necessarily have either of those. But what you have is freedom. You have freedom from attachment. So it's not the desires that bring you back to be reincarnated. It's the attachment to desires. So in other words, I have desires. I want to make more money. I want my books to sell. I want people to take my classes. Those are desires. But when I'm dying, I'm not going to be going, oh man, I wish I'd sold more classes. Oh man, I wish I'd sold more. It's not going to, if I tell this to people sometimes, I say, if anything were to bring me back, if there's any attachment to anything where I'm dying and I'm thinking, oh God, I love the arts. I want to be an actor. That might bring me back. But there have to be an attachment to it. And since non-duality, those attachments have fallen off.
You're exactly right. And back to your aspect of like other cultures, like when people are supposed to be shamans and stuff like that, they still have an everyday job that they do. But then they also take care of the community at the same time. So there you go. There's an example of how other cultures handle that. When you have a dharma to do, but then you also have to make money for your family. You see that all the time. I've ran into people that have experienced that or are dealing with that at this moment. As far as attachments go, that's why it's so important for intentions. And then also you're bringing up a good aspect about near-death experiences. How many times have you watched near-death experiences, and they'll go and they'll get this wake-up call and they'll be like, oh my God, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then they come back, they were making a lot of money and stuff like that, and they were
Yeah,
supposed to use this money for something else, and then they turn
yeah.
around and then they were like, all right, and then they usually break up with that partner because that partner is very materialistic, and it's like, like, all right, I have to change my whole lifestyle now because I have to, this is what I'm here for.
Yeah.
So
And I was going to say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After
yeah,
enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
yep, pretty much
I
the
need to
same
talk
thing.
about, I promised that I would talk about dashas and bhuktis a little bit, because I have students that are like, James, would you please teach me about dashas and bhuktis? First of all, um, there's one of my books, it's called, the original title was Transits of the West, Dashas of the East. And the distributor said that's a terrible title, so I changed it to How to Predict Your Future, which is mainly about planetary transits from the Western system, mainly. But I wrote that book in, I think, 91 or something. The whole second half of that book is dashas. The original title was Transits of the West, Dashas of the East. That was the original title. So the second part of that book is all about dashas and bhuktis, how to predict your future. All my books are on Amazon. Now, they're also on Apple and a few others. Anyway, I don't understand why students have such troubles with dashas and bhuktis. When I learned Jyotish, when I learned Hindu astrology, once I learned the natal chart, I basically understood what dashas and bhuktis would do. But I'm going to go over some points here. So if the planet is in the 10th house, it's going to relate to career. If the planet rules the second house, it's going to relate to money or teaching. If the planet is in the 6th house, it's going to relate to your own health or healing other people. If it rules the 6th house, it's going to relate to that. Then you have to look at how the planet is aspected. If it's in a bad sign, fallen, and it's in the 6th house, health problems, enemy problems, jealous people problems. If it's in the 1st house and it's afflicted, people are going to criticize you. You're going to look bad. If it's in the marriage house or it rules the marriage house, it's going to harm the marriage. On the other hand, if they're well aspected and well placed, they'll do good for the houses that they're in and the houses that they're ruled. How hard is that? It's a simple matter, okay? But if it's a Venus dasha and Venus is right next to Mercury, you're going to get more mercurial effects than you are Venus. If it's a Sun dasha and the Sun is right next to Jupiter, you're going to get real strong Jupiterian effects. It's still going to be, if it's a Sun dasha, it still rules a particular house. That house is going to come into play. If it's in a house, that house is going to come into play. But if it's right next to Jupiter, the dasha is not going to be so much about power and father. It's going to be Jupiterian, spiritual, religious, philosophical, and it'll be good for the Sun as well. When it comes to the bhuktis, it's the same thing. So if you come to the bhukti of the 7th house, there's a possibility of marriage and business. If it rules the 7th or it's in the 7th, it has to do with marriage or business. If you come to a bhukti that is in the 3rd house, it's going to have to do with brothers and sisters. You're looking at the dasha. The dasha is the main influence. So, okay, my chart.
Okay, so when you're saying the bhukti, you're saying basically it activates that house. So for instance, if it's Sun,
Yeah,
then it's going to activate wherever that Sun is and wherever the house of the Sun is, like the 5th house.
yeah,
So that's what you're saying.
yeah.
Okay.
I would say the planet is affected by the house. So if Venus is in the 7th house, you're going to get love in the marriage house. If Saturn's in the 7th and you hit that, it's going to be rough on marriage. If Venus, you take Al Pacino, he never got an Oscar. He had trouble during the 80s with movies. He quit for a while. I can't remember when he quit. Yeah, I think it was the 80s. For 4 years, he quit. He comes to a Rahu dasha, and Rahu's in the third house, which is the arts, and it's exalted. Now, when I say exalted, Parashara said Rahu's exalted in Taurus. My teach, and that's all they said. They didn't say it's well placed here, badly placed there. They didn't say where it's fallen. They didn't say where Ketu was. All they said is Rahu's exalted in Taurus. That's it. My second mentor said, James, Rahu and Ketu function best in Virgo. That's where they give the best results. They get the intelligence. They get some intelligence from Gemini, but when Rahu and Ketu are in Virgo, that's it. They are magnificent. So he hits Rahu in Virgo in the third house, and suddenly he's doing films that are magnificent, and he quickly gets an Oscar. So, okay, so you're looking at where the planet is, and then the bhuktis. Let's take I always use my chart because my horoscope's it's on the cover of Ancient Hindu Astrology. That's my horoscope on there, and it's in all my other books. So I use it to give examples. So when I was in the moon dasha from 10 to 20 years old, the moon is ruling the third house, which is the arts, and it's in the 12th house, which is bad. They were difficult years. I was shy, introverted, extremely shy. The moon in the 12th, not very good, but it ruled the third house, and so I was an actor for 10 years. As soon as I was in my senior year of college, Mars kicked in. Mars rules my 12th house and my 7th house. At the age of 20, I start meditating. It rules the 12th house, meditation. It rules the 7th house. During the moon dasha, no relationships. From 10 to 20, they were so non-existent, it's hard to describe. Part of that is that the moon in my chart is fallen in the Navamsha, in the marriage chart. And it's in the 12th house natally. Mars comes along. Suddenly I'm in relationships, and 2 years later I'm married. Because Mars rules the 7th house. Mars rules the 12th house. I get into meditation. I become a meditation teacher for 7 years of Mars. Now, you have to look at the condition of Mars. Was Mars next to Saturn? If Mars was next to Saturn, it would be 7 years of terrible relationships or no relationships, because it rules the 7th. If Saturn rules the 12th house, if Mars rules the 12th house, as it does, and it's right next to Saturn, it would be debts and expenses. It wouldn't help with the spiritual. But my Mars is 1 degree from Ketu and 2 degrees from Venus. That's good. So if my Mars was next to Ketu, it would be terrible. Ketu would hurt Mars, hurt the marriage, hurt the 12th house. But it's next to Venus Ketu. They're all within 3 degrees. So suddenly I'm having good relationships. I get married. Suddenly I have this great spiritual stuff. For 7 years, I'm just pursuing enlightenment and being married. Suddenly I hit the Rahu dasha. Now, when I'm talking about those planet aspects, Mars being next to Ketu and Venus, they're tight. If Ketu and Venus were 20 degrees away from the Mars, it would be okay, but it wouldn't give all that intense spiritual and intense relationship. And it doesn't have to be conjunct. They could be aspected by Jupiter, but from aspects. Then I hit Rahu. My marriage breaks up. My marriage blows up, and my father dies. So when you're in Rahu, in 70% of the cases, when Rahu begins, you will see intense changes, dramatic changes, pursuing a brand new path. A new path opens up, but it's tumultuous as hell. Now, here's the thing. If you don't have those changes within 3-4 months of Rahu beginning, you're not going to have them. Not everybody has the big changes. 70%, 75%, not 100%. If you're one of the people where you're not going to have the big changes, you'll know in 3 months there were no changes. But if
James,
you
you're
have
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I started this channel exactly when I started Rahu Dasha.
So when Rahu has those big changes, if you have the big changes, they're going to go on for 32 months. They're going to go on during Rahu Dasha, Rahu Bhukti. Then when you get to the next Bhukti, everything settles down and gets normal again. So I hit around 27, 28, I hit the Rahu Dasha. Rahu's in the career house. Suddenly I say to myself, now I don't know Hindu astrology. I started studying Western maybe a year before the Rahu Dasha. So I didn't know my dashas and bhuktis for several years. I hit the Rahu Dasha and I go, what am I doing? Meditating in a cave. Oh, it's all about me, my enlightenment, me. Rahu's in the 10th house. Suddenly I want a career. Changes everything. I have 18 years. I write the book. I go around, having a big career teaching, etc. Then comes the Jupiter Dasha. Jupiter rules children. I have a child. Jupiter's in the 11th house. I finally make some money, not from astrology, but from investments in gold and silver. I said to my wife, I can't do this anymore. I can't work like a dog. Now we have a kid. So I borrowed a bunch of money, invested in gold and silver stocks, and made money finally. If I hadn't done that, I would have stopped astrology by 96, 97. It would have been over for me because I couldn't make money at it. So now I come to Jupiter Dasha. Now Jupiter's retrograde. When you hit a retrograde planet, natally, a retrograde planet is passive. It's passive. So if Jupiter rules the 6th house, you could have 3 planets in the 6th house have healing energy, but the ruler of the 6th is retrograde. It's your choice. It's passive. The ruler is passive, so it's your choice. If Jupiter rules the 7th house and it's retrograde, you don't have to get married. You don't have to. Bells aren't going to go off because it's passive. Same with the dasha. So I tell my wife, I met my second wife when I was 40, 41. I said, now look, in a couple of years, I'm going to hit Jupiter Dasha. Watch what happens. Watch how my life changes. Because when I hit Mars Dasha, completely different Dharma. I went into spiritual and marriage. Rahu hits, I have a big career. I said, watch what happens when Jupiter hits. Jupiter hits, nothing. Because Jupiter's retrograde. A retrograde planet, when it has its Dasha, you need to activate it. You need to push. You need to activate it. A few months after, so Jupiter's in the 11th house, friends and groups. It's aspected within 1 degree by Mars, within 1 degree by Saturn. My Jupiter is 14 Pisces. My Mars is 14 Leo. My Saturn's 14 Virgo. Mars and Saturn hit that Jupiter within a degree. 3, 4 months, 5, 6 months after the Jupiter begins, a friend dies. That's Jupiter. That's the Dasha. It's in the 11th. It's hit by these 2 things. Then, a couple of years later, I have Jupiter Dasha, Saturn Bhukti. They are exactly opposite. Jupiter's in the 11th. Saturn is in the 5th. Jupiter's 14. Saturn's 14. Jupiter rules 11, friends and groups, and large sums of money. Jupiter rules 8, life and death. When I was in India, I learned Hindu astrology in 1982. I went back and now, after I learned it, I knew it. And then I started looking at my chart. I mean, I'm looking at my chart the whole time. I go back to India the first night with my teacher. Now, this guy was really good. He took a look at my horoscope. There were 10 astrologers in the room. He says, you got married at 20, 21 or 23 or 25. I said, yeah, 25. That's the guy I want to learn with. So I study with him. The first night I say, when I'm in that Jupiter Dasha, Saturn Bhukti, is it going to kill me? Jupiter rules the 8th and Saturn's hitting it to the degree. Is that going to kill me? He looks at it, he goes, not sure. When he said not sure, he didn't mean I'm not sure. He meant not definite. Not definite. It could kill you easily. But because Saturn, he said, because Saturn's the Raja Yoga Karaka, it rules the 9th house and the 10th house and forms a Raja Yoga. Most horoscopes need 2 planets to come together. Like for Virgo or Gemini, if there's a Mercury-Venus conjunction, it forms a Raja Yoga. But if you have a Taurus ascendant or a Libra ascendant, Saturn alone forms a Raja Yoga because it rules good houses. So he says, you might get through it. Jupiter-Saturn hits. I'm on my way to go to be the keynote speaker in England for an astrology conference. And I'm exhausted because we had a kid, we had a baby, and he was up all night. We were up all night for months on end. And 2 days before, the day before I'm going to get on the plane. I'm already exhausted from this kid who won't sleep at night. And a hurricane is coming toward us, and I'm on my way. I'm getting ready to go to England for this keynote speech. Now, I had this big giant property with 40 fruit trees. And so the day before the plane flight, I am chopping down all the branches. I'm moving all the crap around the house so that when I leave, my wife will be okay, the house will be okay. I get on the plane and I'm exhausted. And John F. Kennedy Jr. had recently died in a plane crash. I get on the plane in a state of intense exhaustion, and I've always had this fear that I wasn't claustrophobic. I just had this fear. Every time I would see a story about terrorists taking over a plane, I would think the bad part's not getting shot. The bad part is that I'm stuck. I can't get out of there. Okay. So we leave Sarasota on the way to England, and the plane is going to land in Atlanta for a little brief stop. We stop in Atlanta, and the pilot says, we're going to be sitting on the ground for a while. There's a delay, and my brain starts going, I'm stuck. And I have a panic attack. I didn't know what the hell a panic attack was, but that's what I thought I was having a heart attack. I go to the stewardess. I say, do you have any tranquilizers? Because she said, no. She says, and if you can't make it, we're going over the ocean. So get out now if you can. So I get off the plane. I get off. It was that bad. Now, so I get off the plane. I cancel the thing. So for 2.5 years, I'm in Jupiter, Saturn. After that panic attack, for 2.5 years, I was living with the thought that I was dying. I didn't die. I'd go to bed at night and I'd feel like I was dying. This was the Jupiter ruling the 8th house, hit by Saturn. It was awful. Anyway, that's how I got to see Sailor Bob, by the way, because when I read his book, I read 10 pages. I said, I got to see this guy. This guy's going to give me enlightenment. I got to see him. I had been on a plane since then, since the panic attack, but I wasn't going overseas on a plane. I wasn't going to do it. So I brought him to America. He stayed in my house. But that's how the dasha bhuktis work. Jupiter is in the 11th. It's going to affect friends and groups. It's going to affect the 8th house, life and death, and things like that. Then I come to Saturn dasha. Now, now, hold on. If you were in, because I'm trying to teach you about dashas and bhuktis. If I was in Saturn dasha, Jupiter bhukti, that would be different. That would be Saturn picking up the beneficial energy of Jupiter. Okay? That would be good. But Jupiter, Saturn, it's terrible. Jupiter gets hit by the malefic. So when I was in India, the second time I said, listen, those Saturn bhuktis have been great for me. Every time I was in a Saturn bhukti, like when I was an actor, I would play small parts, but when I hit the Saturn bhukti, suddenly I was the lead. Soon as Saturn ended, I would go down. Saturn was always good to me because it rules the 9th house. It's in the 5th, aspected by Jupiter to the degree. Saturn bhukti. So in 1984, I said to my teacher, the Saturn dasha, the bhuktis are great. What do you think? He said, yeah, you're going to make a lot of money. That's going to be a great dasha. He said it rules the 9th and the 10th. He said it's going to be great for spiritual. But I'm thinking fame. I'm thinking the 10th house. I don't care, right? So he says, I think it'll be spiritual. So flash forward to, I don't know, the age of 60. I'm 73 now. Flash forward to the age of 60, Saturn kicks in. But here's the thing. Sailor Bob, the non-duality teacher, came to my house when I was 53. And he stayed there for 5 weeks. And it took hold. The non-duality took hold. And suddenly the career was meaningless to me. And suddenly enlightenment was meaningless to me. People would read my non-duality book and say, oh, you got to read this spiritual book. You got to read that. I said, I have no interest in it anymore. I have no more 9th house because it's over. I don't care about the career. It doesn't mean anything. There's no attachment. So I'm in the Saturn dasha, and nothing big happens particularly. But Saturn's my best planet. But I don't care anymore. There's no attachments. But Saturn is by far, it's the only one planet in my chart that is phenomenally good. So I hit the Saturn dasha, and my books weren't selling very well because of ebooks and things like that. And Amazon had taken over, and I didn't have my books in Amazon. And in Saturn dasha, every morning I would wake up and I think I gotta edit my books and get them on ebooks. But can you imagine the thought of this? I got 6 books. And I'm not just going to get them on ebooks. I want to go back and edit them. It's a nightmare. So one day, 2 or 3 years into the Saturn dasha, I say because every morning I'm waking up saying I've got to do this, and I don't want to do it. One day I say I'm going to spend 30 minutes. I'm just going to go to the computer, and for 30 minutes I'm going to work on it. I start to work on it, and I find that it's incredibly easy. Why? Because when you're looking at a dasha or a bhukti, it's not just the houses that it's in, it's not just the houses that it rules, it's the planet itself. So if it's a Venus dasha, it's about love and money. If it's Mercury, it's about writing and teaching, along with the house it's in, along with the house it rules, along with the aspects it gets. Whenever somebody comes to Saturn, they're always petrified of Saturn. Oh my God, Saturn, it's terrible, it's terrible. No, Saturn is hard work, organization, discipline, administration, organization, hard work, discipline, responsibility. In a Saturn dasha, I tell people, you want to do something that's going to leave a legacy. You want to do a project that's going to take years. You want to build buildings. You want to build an ashram. You want to write a book. You want to do something that's going to take time, that's going to take a lot of effort, because it'll be natural. So the next thing you know, I've updated the ancient Hindu astrology book, which needed to be revised in 2020. I wrote the next book, the Braha Sutras. I mean, I had no intention to write any more books. I had no desire for it. But I wrote the Braha Sutras after that, came naturally. I updated. And then somebody, I'm going to tell you this part. I used to take my son when he was about 12 years old, 10, 11, 12. I lived in Florida. There's a town in Florida called Casadega. And in Casadega, Florida, it's about 30 minutes north of Orlando. There's a town of mediums. I call them psychics. They call themselves mediums. So you go to this town, and there's 25, 30 mediums living there. You sign up for 1 or 2 or 3, and you get readings. So I take my son there because I taught him astrology. So I take him to the psychics, and he goes, and I get a reading from the psychic. And this lady, she was in Casadega. I think she's still there. Her name is Diane Davis. She's a good psychic. And she says to me, somebody is going to help you with your career. Now, my career was very flat then because I had stopped astrology for a few years, and I didn't care about it so much. I do a little bit, but not much. And she says, this guy's going to help you with your career. His name is Roger. A couple of months later, Kapil Raj says, hey, you want to do an interview? I do an interview, and I get clients for the next 3 months. Then the other Indian astrologers see the video. So the point is, I start the Saturn dasha. I got no career. I'm doing gold and silver stuff, but I know it's my great, you know, 9th and 10th ruler, but nothing's happening because I have no desire. Nature takes hold, and then the Indians start having me do videos. The next thing you know, so what I was hoping for when I was 30 is actually happening now. It doesn't have the same meaning. What has meaning to me is that I'm in my Dharma, and that I can help people. I can move people along, and I can move the field of astrology forward. That has meaning to me. I'm not attached to it. If there's no more astrology because the internet destroys it, because the internet has done a lot of damage to the world of astrology, I can hardly tell you the people out there that don't know what they're doing. But I have no attachments to it. But it's the Dharma. I'm doing it. But the Saturn dasha has brought, like, people come to me for readings, you know, and if I say, oh, I'm going to be a little late or something, I could tell them, hey, look, I'm going to be an hour late. They say, that's fine, Mr. Braha, that's fine, because I'm famous to that. And I think, what's going on? You know, the whole, they look at you like, oh my God, I'm talking to James Braha, and you go, what is this? But that's the Saturn dasha, because it's so well aspected and it rules the career house. So it's brought what I thought it would bring, except that part of it doesn't have any meaning to me anymore. The fame, it doesn't mean anything. But what does mean something is being able to move the field forward. And the last class that I give, class 12, out of the 12 classes, I ask the students for a favor. Normally, I ask students for two favors. One favor is, when people talk about sati sati, stop them, and tell them sati sati is 1/4 of your life. Those 7.5 years, they happen every 29 years. 1/4 of your life is not ruined by sati sati. It's ridiculous. Please, and I say this, and people still worry about it. So I say, please help me with that. And then I say, help me with this. Please tell people that Rahu and Ketu have good sides. Rahu in the 10th house is my career, it's power. Ketu is next to my ascendant ruler Venus, is my psychic metaphysical. It's hypnosis, it's oil, gas, film, photography. They're not all bad. Help me with that. I tell my students, help me pass that message along. Rahu and Ketu are very good, as well as being malefics.
You're absolutely right, James, because I have Rahu in the 10th house with Saturn.
Fantastic.
There you go.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. So what I ask the clients to do in the end is to do what I did. I went beyond what my teachers taught me. My teacher, Santanam, was maybe 40 when I was, he was only about 10 years older than me. I was 30, he was about 40. Padya was 45. Okay. So they taught me what they knew. When you get my classes, you're getting classes from a guy who's been doing it for 45 years and has been not just doing it, but when I, sometimes I say, why do I know so much stuff that these people don't know? And it's because when I wrote these books, every one of those books took a year. It wasn't a year of sitting at the computer and writing. It's a year of looking at horoscopes and seeing how the planets work. It's a year of reading what everybody else has said about the aspects. So I have all of this knowledge that came from writing those books, doing the research that other people don't have. And I say, why do they not know the stuff that I know? And I've written about it, but they read it, but they didn't study it like it was like that. So what I asked them is this. I asked them to go beyond what I have done in these classes. If you take those classes, your work will never be the same again. You will be so, I'm getting clients who say, James, I'm getting 90% accurate. People's jaws are dropping because they're becoming accurate. They know what they're doing. Here's what I couldn't do. There's a part of Jyotish that has been ignored. My teachers ignored it, and I never got to it. I tried to get to it a little bit, but I never really got to it. And that's the signs. So in other words, my Venus and Mars are in Leo. They're in the 4th house. I talk about the Venus Mars being in the 4th house. Like when I owned a home, I was adding on rooms and doing stuff with land and having fruit trees. It's all about the 4th house, Venus Mars. But it's in Leo. What exactly does it mean that the Venus Mars is in Leo? I can tell you, my Saturn, which rules the 10th house, career, and is in the 5th house, which is knowledge and information, it's in Virgo. Virgo is organizing. When I wrote this book, Ancient Hindu Astrology, what I did was I organized it by going to my favorite Western astrology book by Isabel Hickey, which is called Astrology, a Cosmic Science. I love the way she laid the book out. Planets first, then houses, then aspects. And I wanted a big book like hers. So the Virgo energy of my 10th ruler is allowing me to organize and categorize. If the 10th ruler was in the 6th house or if it was in Gemini, or if it was in Taurus, what would that mean? How would Taurus affect my career? But it's in Virgo, so there's a lot of organizing. So I never really got to that, and nobody else is doing it. So that's what I would want my students to go beyond what I did and see. First, you have to master what I've done. Don't start now until you take the classes. And one of the students said, James, you're going to be known more for these classes than all your books, because it's changing you know, that one guy, for years, he couldn't figure out how to do this. Suddenly, after the classes, he goes, oh, I get it now. That's what happens. After you master that, see if you can find out what the signs, how the signs are affecting the planets in their dashas and their bhuktis and their natal, etc. So,
James, I absolutely agree with you. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot about lately is Occam's razor, right? The simplest is the best. And I
I
think
love
the
that.
problem is with going to all the divisional charts and then trying to like look at this work.
What you're going to get on the internet is the same as when you're studying a language. I'm studying Portuguese now because my son is living in Portugal. We visit him. I want to be able to speak it. What I'm doing is I'm learning words. I'm getting words and words and words. But to get the actual full language is a whole other story. So with astrology, if you're learning, even if you're getting good teachers, even if you're getting good teachers on the internet, what you're learning are words. You're not learning the whole thing. What you need is you need to be like in the classes that I do, they're an hour and 20 minutes each. It's 50 horoscopes. 25 are very famous people. Elon Musk, Taylor Swift, Al Pacino. There's 50 different horoscopes that we go over. What you need is to be with a teacher looking at the horoscopes. That's what I did with both my teachers. I had 25 horoscopes and they would look at them and tell me what they knew. So you have to be doing that. You have to have classes with a teacher, okay? The other thing is, why is Isabel Hickey's Western astrology book the best Western book on the market? I'll tell you why. Because she wrote it when she was 70. That's why it's so good. Most of the books you get when people are like in my ancient Hindu astrology book, I wrote it when I was 30, 33, 34. The revised edition is a totally different book. It is so much better because I wrote it when I was 70. The Braha Sutras, a lifetime of. So you need to study with a teacher where you're looking at horoscopes after one, after another, after another. That's the way to learn. If you do it on the internet, you think that you know what you're doing, but what you've got is a bunch of words without being able to actually put it all together.
It's definitely the case. I literally tell my students all the time, like, you have to do this. You have to practice. You have to do it. Because it doesn't matter. I can tell you all day long until you put it in your mind and you figure out where to compartmentalize that.
That's right.
That's when
That's
you're
right.
going to get it.
That's
That's when you're
right.
going to get it. And it takes experience. You have to do it over and over and over. That's how you're going to learn.
Got to have a teacher. You got to be looking at horoscopes over and over and over. You got to have a teacher, and you have to. Otherwise, you know, and with the dashas and bhuktis, I can't believe this, but people go to books to read what the dasha is going to be. You can't say, oh, the sun dasha will be this, and the Jupiter Mars will be this. You can't do that without a horoscope. You can't just say, oh, the book says Jupiter Ketu dasha means this, and Rahu. Yes, to a certain extent, Jupiter is religion and children. Venus is love and marriage and mathematics. Mercury is writing and teaching. Yeah, there's a little bit. But to go to books and think that you're going to get an understanding of dashas and bhuktis, you've got to see how it works in the horoscopes. As I said, if you get that book, How to Predict Your Future, the second part of it is all about the dashas and the bhuktis with horoscopes, how it works with horoscopes. And there's the transits in that book as well, the transits of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto through the houses. And I mean, there's a lot of material there. When you're doing transits, by the way, you have to do the transits from the point of view of the ascendant and from the moon. So if I'm looking at my horoscope, Saturn in April 2025, Saturn goes into sidereal or Hindu sidereal Pisces. So Pisces is my 11th house. Saturn will go into my 11th house, and that will have to do with restrictions on friends and groups and which friends to keep and which friends to get rid of, etc. It'll aspect the 5th house, which is investments in children, etc. But you also have to say, when Saturn goes into Pisces, it will be in the 12th house from my moon. So that will mean working on debts and expenses, working on spiritual. In May, Jupiter goes into Gemini. So Gemini will be my 2nd house. So the transit of Jupiter through the 2nd house will bring money. It'll bring money and education and knowledge, but it'll be in the third house from the moon. So it'll be about luck with brothers and sisters. You have to do both. In the scriptures, they always say take transits from the moon. That's because everybody knows that you also do it from the ascendant. It's obvious. Doing it, transits from the ascendant are more essential than from the moon. Why? Everybody born the day you're born has the moon in the same place. Sometimes the moon could be in two different signs in 24 hours, but mostly, if you're looking at it from the point of view of the moon, everybody born on your day is having the same transits because it's from the moon. So it's not as specific. I mean, it's specific in your horoscope, but it's not as essential as, there's 12 horoscopes in 24 hours, 12 ascendants. So the transits from the ascendant are much more, they're more important. They're both important, but you got to use both.
So you feel like when someone checks their chart or they look at their transits, you should look at it from the rising sign.
Lugna, it's another chart. Look, I also talk about, especially in the Braha Sutras, I talk about the Bhava chart. You cannot do a horoscope without understanding the Bhava chart. That's another chart. You got the natal chart, you got the chart from the moon, you got the Navamsha, you got the Dasamsha. And so the Bhava chart is, if you have, like, for example, in my Bhava chart, in the Bhava chart, you look at my ascendant at 2 degrees. In the natal chart, in the ancient times, any planet in Taurus is in the first house. My first house starts at 2 Taurus. If I have Venus at 28 Taurus, it's in the first house. But Venus is so, if Venus was in 28 and the ascendant's 2 degrees, it's so far from the ascendant degree, it's going to be in the first house and the second. So this is like, how can a planet be in 2 houses? It's just like if you plant a mango tree at the edge of your property by the fence. Half the fruit is in your yard, half of it falls in the neighbor's yard. Now, you look at my sun. My ascendant is 2 degrees Taurus. My sun is in 29 degrees Virgo. So the sun is in the 5th house from the ascendant. And yes, the sun has some effect on the 5th house. But the ascendant's 2 degrees. The sun is 29. It's having more of an effect on the 6th house, which is why I was always into health and healing and things like that. Now, so the Bhava chart basically is to say that the ascendant degree is the middle of the first house. So generally, approximately 15 degrees past the 2 degree point is the planets 15 degrees before my 2 degrees Taurus and 15 degrees after the 2 degrees Taurus. That would be from 17 Aries to 17 Taurus is the first house. Therefore, anything from 17 degrees onward is going to fall in 2 houses. Now, people get very hung up on, oh, it's 15 and a half degrees. It's 16 degrees past. It's an approximation. Approximately, we take the ascendant as the middle of the house. So I don't worry. Like my ascendant's 2 degrees. If a planet's in 17 or 18, I'm not going to care. I'm not going to assume it's going to hit the next house. It might not. But when it gets to 20, 25, 28, it's going to hit 2 houses. So if you do that, it's the same like Kujadosha. You're looking at Kujadosha from the ascendant. If you look at it from the ascendant, 38% of all charts have Kujadosha. That's 38% of people having a ruined marriage. Now you take it from the moon, you're up to 75% of the people have Kujadosha. Now you take it from the Navamsha. Oh, there's Kujadosha in the Navamsha, Mars affliction in the Navamsha. Now everybody's got Mars affliction if you take it from the moon and the Navamsha. You just take it from the ascendant. So when it comes to planets from the transits from the sun, I mean, how many things are you going to do?
So James, I have a couple questions for you, if you're interested. And I had some thoughts about what's the difference between free will and destiny? Because this is a curious thing for me as well, because of the fact I'm psychic, okay? And I have noticed that when I have a vision, I'll get to the actual event and I'll notice there's slight variations. Okay, so I know that there's paths, but also I know as being a psychic, I'm given warnings like you don't want to go down this path. You don't want to go down that path. So I know that there's a certain amount of destiny in our chart. So from a Vedic perspective, from, looking at the chart, how does that work? Destiny
This is
versus
a very,
free will.
this is a very complex question. And first of all, the psychic stuff is going to be a little bit different from the astrological stuff. Like in tarot,
It depends with the tarot. It does depend on the framing of the question. Okay. Because if you look
right.
at let's just give the Rider-Waite as an example. Okay. So you'll see the Rider-Waite, and in the booklet, they'll be like, okay, you could go this path or you could go this path. But it's the framing of the question that will give you more precise
Absolutely.
accuracy.
I agree with that.
So you say, give me the best possible outcome for this. All right. So, or what's the most likely? It's just about the intentions and the framing of the question that will help you with that. So,
Right. But you're talking about the free will versus destiny. And I would
right.
say that there's a little bit more free will. Like if I'm looking at the horoscope, you take my Jupiter, Saturn, they're exactly opposite. That's going to be very karmic. I didn't say this when I was talking about dashas and bhuktis. This is really important. Dashas and bhuktis are going to give you a certain amount of information based on where the bhukti planet is, where the dasha planet is, what they rule, what houses they occupy. When two planets aspect each other and are running the dasha bhukti, or two planets are conjunct and they run their dasha bhukti, there's going to be less free will, less experience of free will. When Jupiter, Saturn hit me, the free will was non-existent because they're hitting exact. When Mars dasha occurred, and Mars is 2 degrees from Ketu and Venus, there's no way I was going to change that. That was going to be relationships and spiritual. You couldn't alter it. It's karmic. It's destined because they're so close. If Mars had been ruling the 12th and the 7th, as it does, and Venus and Ketu were 25 degrees away from that Mars, I would say, yeah, it's got to do with spiritual. It's got to do with relationships. But I couldn't make a solid prediction. Oh my God, this is definitely happening because the karma is so intense. The dasha bhukti planets are in the same house. You got a dasha bhukti, you got a period, sub-period running their dasha bhukti. They're both in the 5th house. You're not getting away from the 5th house, and it's destined. It's like I will tell a person, these two planets are in the same house. Whatever occurs is going to be very karmic, good karma or bad, depending upon whether they're benefics or malefics. But you're not going to stop them. They're going to happen. It's fated. It's destined. If they're aspecting tightly or conjunct, you're not going to get away with it. I use the phrase, you're not going to get away with it. In other words, you're not going to get away with it. It's going to do what it's going to do. It's destined. Okay? That's the tighter it gets, the more destined it is. You're talking free will versus destiny. The tighter the aspects are onto that dasha bhukti planet or the two of them, if you're in a dasha of Mercury and Mercury's in the same degree as Saturn, you're not going to get away with that. Mercury's going to get hit by Saturn and the destiny is there. It's fated. Or the two planets are together running a dasha bhukti. It's fated. So that's more fated versus free will. You might be able to work with it, to change it. Now, all of that being said, what I've just told you is total illusion because from the broadest point of view, the world, the creation, the whole existence, the galaxy, the universe, the people, the whole thing, it's an illusion. It's Maya. It's not real. Our experience is that it's real. So that's why I say, within the illusion, within the dream, if the dasha bhukti planets of Jupiter and Saturn are in different houses, you got something to work with. You got some leeway. But if they're in the same house within 5 degrees, the destiny is going to happen and it's going to be fated and it's going to be destined. But from the broad point of view, the whole thing is an illusion. There's no free will at all. So at the beginning, as soon as Brahma breathed out, they say Brahma breathed out and there was a creation. And then gazillion years later, Brahma breathes in, the creation's over. Later on, okay. So as soon as that creation is made, the whole thing is over. The whole thing it's a dream. So there is in reality, there's no free will because there's nobody here. It's like saying, last night I had a dream And in the dream, I was doing a horoscope. And in the dream, I couldn't figure out what the horoscope was saying. It was a dream. Okay. It was a dream. It wasn't real.
Right.
This
That's a good point.
conversation
That's a
that
good
you and
point.
I are having right now is every bit as much of a dream as that dream last night. Because
Yeah.
the universe comes and goes. There's no independent nature. The only
Mhm.
thing that has an independent nature and was never born and never dies and always is awareness and consciousness. That's real. Awareness and consciousness is real. It was never born, it never died, it will always be here. I used to worry that Nostradamus had said that the world's going to end. It's going to in a
I
ball.
used to do the same thing. Yep.
It used to bother me. Now, okay, the world is burned up in a ball of fire, and then
Yeah.
eventually awareness or consciousness, again, somehow unfathomable to us how it could do this, because it's nothing but oneness, has a desire to make a dream existence, and it has a dream existence for another 472 gazillion years. And
Yeah.
there's a whole existence with conversations like this, and it's all an illusion.
No, no, you're right, James. When I
But
went
from
through
our point
awakening,
of view,
it was
from our
definitely awareness that I was, the source was inside of me. It was not masculine, feminine. It was some kind of source that was complete love and peace. But it was in that person. It was in the grass. It was in the trees. And then you go back to the Aborigines when they talk about the dot paintings, and they're showing you, look, you're that dot, you're that dot, you're that dot. We all make this whole picture.
yeah.
But I do feel like that we're coming back up from materialism. We're going back up again. I know we get a lot of people are like, no, we're going down. I'm telling you, we're coming back up again because there's information that's coming available that wasn't available before about health and healing and about spiritual development that wasn't there before. That's making it available for people. So we're bringing our dots back together to the one, to the whole. That's what I feel like. But you did answer the question technically earlier. I was thinking about it as you were talking. When you were saying that there are people that pick careers that not necessarily is the highest potential of their chart, but they're doing that because they don't have the confidence level to go to the highest potential of their chart. And they feel like they should be there instead of being there. So, to a certain extent, you're saying that there is some form of free will there because you can be like, you have this huge potential in your chart, but you're only
We
living at this
have
level.
we have the experience of free will. There's no
Right,
doubt about that.
right.
However, when all is said and done, the world's not even here. It's a dream. It's an illusion. So
Yeah.
from that point of view, it was written from the instant the creation occurred, the dream, the instant the dream occurred, it was meant that in the year 2024, this client had no confidence and this client did, you know, like that. But
Yeah. My,
look, you have to live as if there is free will and do the best that you can, make the right choices. The if there's any reason, if there's
yeah.
any reason that we can surmise why the oneness decided to make this illusion, it was for fun. So
Yes.
within this dream,
Yes.
the fun is finding the career, making the money, getting the fame, getting the intelligence, getting the spiritual. That's the game. So but we have to live as if it's real, as because we're experiencing it like we have free will. So
Yeah.
you have to
Well, no,
live that.
you're right. You're absolutely right. I remember one time I had a dream because I kept asking about that particular thing. And in the dream, I was on standing on top of the table and I was saying, this isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real. And everyone talked back to me and they said, we don't care. We like playing our roles. And then I was also contemplating one day about why does this, why is this happening? What are we doing? Like, what is the purpose of all this? And when I was younger, I was given this doll. You can pull the string, but I didn't want that doll. I wanted the doll that could, like, there was a Susie Scribbles that could, like, do whatever. And this doll that I got from my parents, you had to pull the string and then, the doll talked. But I wanted the doll to do its own thing. And I was shown that, and it was saying to me that we're here to live our highest potential, but not for God to just pull the string. For us to
Right.
realize that on our own, because we're supposed to become co-creators.
The so the reason for if there's any reason that the oneness would do it, it's for fun. They call
Yeah.
it Lila, the play of creation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's why it's so important, really. It's about people's intentions. The most important, if you want to be an accurate reader, you just have good intentions. Like, if you want to be accurate, then you have those intentions to be accurate.
Yeah.
So it's just your intentions, really. And even if you were talking about the books and the internet and so forth, so on, there's an energy to that. So, like, I used to study like Madame Blavatsky and stuff like that. I read all those books. They have a certain weight to them. You can feel that there are certain amounts of knowledge in that. But then you read some of the new age books that you find now, and it feels hollow. It just feels like, okay, this person did this because they wanted to make money. It wasn't because, and they got this information from other areas, just like we were talking about earlier, where there's a lot of misconceptions in astrology. There's a lot of misconceptions in tarot. There's a lot of misconceptions in the new age understanding of how manifestation works. But it's because everyone's mimicking everyone else instead of feeling the knowledge and feeling it within yourself, because the answers are within you. It starts within you and then it goes out. It projects out. All right, if you guys like this video, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments below. And if you guys would like a reading with James or you'd like to take one of his classes, I have left the link in the description box below. I love you guys so much. I'll see you guys in another day or two. Have a great rest of your next couple days, and I will see you guys soon.